You're listening to the Valley Current.
What today's topic is about, because we were having this discussion, is about these things called prediction markets,
right?
Which I've been aware of for a long time. And believe it or not, my father played an important role in developing without ever living to see them. So in the prediction markets, people are actually betting on who's going to be president the way they would bet on how valuable Tesla stock is going to be.
Right.
And what we see here, just in the last, hour basically, is that Trump is way up. So the price you see, 67 cents, is basically what people are paying right now for a gamble that will pay $1 if Trump is elected president. And so the 67 cents can really be read off as a probability.
Right.
And we see that Biden is next at 21, Harris is at 14. But I think the important thing to look at here is this graph where this is the assassination attempt, and we see huge volume. The bars are how many shares are being traded, so that shoots way up. The Trump price goes up, drops a little bit. And so this is so fascinating. I don't know why everyone on earth isn't looking at these things instead of the polls. And let's quick look at a 30-day graph. So in the 30-day graph, this is Trump, this is Biden, that's Harris. Gee, can you guess where the debate took place? Well, duh, right here, and Biden's on the way down. And then big horse race between Harris and Biden. Now, a lot of people are not on that market. That is to say, Pete Buttigieg, they have a contract for Pete Buttigieg, but they don't have one for like Hakeem Jeffries or Gretchen Whitmer. So, it's not really a complete market, but it's quite fascinating. And I wrote about this
in the Flaw of Averages, right?
In the Flaw of Averages book. And I thought it'd be fun to look back at some of the early markets there. Oh, and another thing is, and this is going to be really working without a net. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Smirkanish this morning said you should be looking at the prediction markets. Someone just sent me a video of that. I don't even know how long it is. So I suggest we wait until the end of this session. Then we'll play the Smirkanish video.
Okay.
And I'll cut it off the end if it's no good, but it may be very germane to what we're talking about. So, so let's take a look. And by the way, this is real money. So in a poll, you might tell people what you think they want to hear. With real money, you're betting your own money on it. And that sounds more honest and more instantaneous. But that doesn't mean people aren't spoofing the markets.
Right. But the website you've gone to is just one of many prediction sites, right? You went to predictit.org.
Predictit.org. There are several. I wouldn't say many. Yeah. And they get outlawed from time to time. And I don't know how clean they all are. But
it's sort of like online betting in a way, right?
Very much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so is the stock market.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So there you have it. So let me take you back to my book, mm-hmm. Flaw of Averages, in chapter 27, Prices, Probabilities, and Predictions. And here I take you back to 1994. where Colin Powell was possibly going to be the nominee for president. And this was run out of the University of Iowa, the Iowa prediction markets. Now, let's just go back to, do the markets really work? Let's not forget GameStop and people spoofing the market, manipulating the market and getting rich off it. So anyway, it's very interesting how this market started. So the Iowa prediction market ends up selling two contracts, a yes contract and a no contract. A yes contract pays you $1 if Colin Powell is the Republican nominee. The no contract pays you $1 if he isn't. Now, how would you get a market like this started? I thought this was intriguing. They only sold them in pairs. A yes plus a no pair. What's that worth? $1. Exactly $1, because only one of them is going to be true. So you could buy these for $1, but then you could start trading them. So the no line here, okay, is coming down. The yes line is coming up. Colin Powell begins his book tour. Big jump.
Right.
O.J. Simpson verdict. Temporary little drop. By the way, every time the graph is not completely symmetric, there's a potential arbitrage opportunity, but forget about it. It's probably not close enough to really make anything on.
Right.
Now, there are several wonderful examples here, but my favorite one. Oh, well, here's a very important one. Oh my gosh. So this was not a prediction market itself. There's a ton of stuff written on this. That was the date of the 9/11 attack, that Tuesday.
Right.
And
September 11, 2001.
And the ratio, typically, of calls to puts,
right,
of a given stock,
option contract,
typically 2 to 1, or
right.
Let's say the ratio of puts to calls is 0.5, right?
Yeah. People are more optimistic about stocks going up, so they buy calls and they rarely less often buy puts.
Yeah, except that this ratio is supposed to be 1/2. On the Tuesday, it starts to climb. This is put options on American Airlines. Oh my God! All right.
Is it American or United?
Oh no, this one's United. This one is United.
Which is one of the planes. Which is one of the planes that was.
That's right. That's right. And it reaches 25 here. Mm-hmm. This ratio is supposed to be 1/2 under normal conditions, so it's 50 times too big on the Thursday before the Tuesday attack, and it comes down. Here is Delta. Here is American down here. Now look, American pops up on the Monday to like 6. So it's 12 times too big. Now, there's been lots of speculation on this, and it looks, there are explanations both ways. The feeder airlines get hammered if big airlines do less business, because then they get less business. And so they might well take out put options on their, their big brothers. So in case they go down. Okay. But anyway, definitely surprising there. Now, so markets are incredibly important, that's for sure. Now here is my favorite one. Will they find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? No. That's like, yes, you will. No, you won't. No, you didn't.
Right.
And what I love about that is, I don't care what the government says. The market, speaks a different kind of truth.
Right.
So that's why we should have them alive. Okay. Now, one night, I was watching these all the time. Mm-hmm. And we are talking now July 15th, 2004. Oh my gosh. It's like 20 years ago. And the most hottest traded contract was the Martha .time plus 14 months. This was the night before Martha Stewart was sentenced. She was already convicted.
Right.
And this is a contract that's going to pay off if she gets more than 14 months. And it was the most heavily traded contract of the day. Like the price was around 33.50. What was that? 33. Oh, no, here, 35, about 35, right? Okay. And that was down by 25 points. So it was way, way down. So here it is, the night before the sentencing. If I had had gumption, I would have gone out and bought a whole bunch of Martha Omnimedia stock that night, right? I could have put in an order, a buy order, but I didn't have a broker or anything, and I didn't do it. But the next day, what happens is, I got to get the time in here. I think her sentence occurred right around this time, right around here. And of course, it was less than 14 months. So now you see that if I had bought the stock, right, it's climbing a little bit up to sentence time, right? And then when they hear the sentence and it's low, it shoots way up. What I love about this is that this is an insider trading scandal on an insider trading scandal. It's like people doing insider trading on the sentence of the insider trading. I love it. I love it. Anyway, so that's chapter 27 of the Flaw of Averages book. Get it on Kindle.
The thing that's so rich about this story is that your father, Jimmy, I guess that was his informal name, Professor Jimmy Savage, who worked at the University of Chicago, if I'm remembering it right?
Right. Yes. So in a sense, you know, I think of myself often as like the father of the chance age, because I own chanceage.com that I bought for $12 from GoDaddy. That makes my father the grandfather of the chance age, as you pointed out. But he was also very influential in Bayesian statistics and in subjective probabilities. Now, he did not invent Bayesian statistics, but a lot of people think of him as the North American distributor. He really promoted this stuff. And in Bayesian statistics, it's kind of linked arm in arm with what is known as personal probabilities. So the classic frequentist school of probability says you can assign a probability to an experiment you can repeat a gazillion times, like flipping a coin, you know, or rolling a die. And then, well, let's say we roll a die a bazillion times, and we count up the fraction of the number of times it comes up 4, and that's 1/6, and so that's the probability of the die coming up 1/6. But you can't do that with everything. So, you know, I love the picture of the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. So the Golden Gate Bridge must have a probability of falling down tomorrow. Could happen. But we can't do an experiment. We can't do a million experiments and find out if it'll fall down. But we know a direct asteroid hit would completely wipe it out. A good earthquake could do it. A truck bomb, you know, I mean, Ukraine tries to bomb the Kerch Bridge, but misses and hits the Golden Gate. I mean, any of these things could. You say the chance is small, but it's not zero. And so my dad's most famous book, The Foundations of Statistics, written in 1951-52 while we were in Paris. I was like 6, 7. He
and
was
available
Guggenheim.
And available in full text on Google for free.
There you go.
All 350 pages plus.
So that book was really about how you could model all of probability theory in terms of what people would pay for gambles. So let's do it with a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So, I say, Jack, what would you pay for a gamble that paid you $1 if the Golden Gate Bridge fell down tomorrow? And you'd say, that's too small to imagine. I wouldn't pay anything for it. I say, how about a gamble that would pay you $1 million
Right.
if the bridge fell down tomorrow? And you might say, well, would I pay $1? No, that's a 1 in a million. I'd pay a dime for that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are willing to pay a dime for it, that implies that you think there's one chance in 10 million that the bridge will fall down.
Right.
Of course, you can update that over time as the probabilities appear differently. So my dad was a great proponent of this. There's a British mathematician, Ramsey, an Italian, De Finetti. I don't know if he worked directly with Ramsey. He was certainly aware of him. De Finetti, he worked with De Finetti because in 1958, on his next sabbatical, we spent the year in Rome, which was another story, best year of my life. Now, I think it might be interesting at this point to see what Smerconish has to say about this.
Okay.
Should we try that?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's go dig for that. Okay, what I'm going to do is open this up, and let's see what Smerconish says.
Sure.
Follow the money, not the pundits. Polls can try to forecast the 2024 presidential election outcome, but what are the betting markets in politics telling us? Websites like Betfair, Predictit, and Polymarket let their users bet on several contests in the 2024 election cycle. The three markets differentiate based on commissions, fees, and which consumers are allowed to participate. For example, Predictit is for U.S. consumers only. Polymarket is a crypto-based outlet for non-U.S. consumers. Betfair is a more traditional betting market for consumers in Europe and Australia. Customers using Predictit are limited to $850 per person for each market, while Betfair and Polymarket currently have customers betting a combined total of more than $200 million in the general election.
Wow.
Right now, Predictit shows Vice President Kamala Harris with a 39% chance of becoming the Democratic nominee compared to President Biden's 50% likelihood. In the general election against former President Trump, Betfair says that Biden has a 26% chance of beating Trump, while Harris has about a 39% chance. The other two markets predict former President Trump has about a 60% chance of beating either candidate. Here to break down the numbers is Professor Harry Crane, who teaches statistics at Rutgers University, earned a PhD in statistics from the University of Chicago. He's also co-founder of Researchers One, that's a decentralized research platform. Dr. Crane, you think that the betting markets are more reliable, more accurate in terms of their predictive value than the polls. How come?
Well, this is something that I've been studying. I've been studying these markets since around the 2016 election, every midterm and presidential cycle since then. And that's just what the data shows, is that if you wanted a single best predictor, one source of information to know what's going on in the elections, it's the prediction markets. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because any given piece of information that you might have, such as a poll or an aggregator or news or a pundit's opinion, all of that's being combined by the participants in these markets who have a financial incentive to get it right and to make money off of this.
What's the takeaway from the nomination status, obviously on the Democratic side of the aisle?
Well, what's interesting, I mean, these markets are going up and down as the news changes over the past couple of weeks. As of right now, I mean, Biden gained a little bit in the past couple of days since his NATO speech. He's up slightly over 50% now, so he's a slight favorite, but it's essentially a coin toss between Biden or any other candidate.
And relative to who wins in November, regardless of who the candidate might be, Republican or Democrat, what are you seeing?
Well, right now, Trump has about a 60 to 62% chance of winning in these markets. If you then consider which specific nominee, he does seem to fare better against Biden and Harris than any other unnamed nominee. But I think the thing that I take away from that, even with all the chaos and argument and debate on the Democratic side, if you're on the Republican side, Trump's still with a 60% chance. Yes, he is the favorite, But I think if you're on the Republican side, you'd want that number to be a lot higher. So they shouldn't just spike the ball just yet.
Is this a fair way to characterize the data that other, meaning someone other than Biden and Harris, is least likely to win the Democratic nomination, but would be more likely to beat Donald Trump if they were to secure the nomination?
Yeah, that's pretty much what the markets are saying right now. If you consider any other candidate getting the nomination, depending which market you look at, their chance of winning would be anywhere from 50 to 70% as of right now.
One other question, if I may. A lot of the money that we're talking about, because apart from Predict It, which is unique, we're talking really about foreign investment. As somebody said on my radio program on Sirius XM, why would we rely on a foreign perspective, even if it is a betting market? You would say what to that?
Well, first, one thing I would say is that the regulations in the U.S. need to change so that we get more markets in the U.S. It is crazy that we're limited to $800 and we're relying on the information from overseas. But the answer to that is that there are professional bettors, the biggest bettors, the best, the smartest, biggest syndicates in the world who make millions, tens of millions of dollars doing this. So they're incentivized. They have access to all the same information that we do, all the data, the polling data, the news. And so it's really the markets at work. And just because they're located overseas doesn't mean that they're not getting access to the same information and the same expertise that might come from the American side.
Yeah, or as Tom Friedman would say, the world is flat.
What you're saying is there's a certain wisdom in the crowd of data that's willing to make bets, right? It's like estimates of the number of jelly beans, right? If you do something that collects enough data, it's going to tell you something about what the overall wisdom of the crowd is, right?
Well, right. I mean, that's the efficient market hypothesis of the University of Chicago. And by the way, my dad co-founded the statistics department at the University of Chicago.
Right. Right.
And of course, the 60% number we saw was prior to tonight's assassination attempt. I'm just going to pop this up again and refresh the screen and just see what it says now. Oh, so it's down to 66. You know, you're going to expect markets to bounce around a little bit, but to think that Biden really has a chance at 25 cents versus 66.
Right. It's not quite 100%. It's a little more than 100%. Like if you go down to the bottom, if we summarize.
Well, so here's the thing.
It's like 30. It's like 125, right? So you got to normalize it a little bit.
Well,
right?
but no, here's the thing, Jack. If the markets were really perfect and it ever got above 100%,
right,
then you could have a guaranteed arbitrage by selling them all, right? Or no, buying them all. I forget. We'd go one way or the other.
Right.
No, you'd buy them all, right? No, you'd sell them all. I could do the math if I sat down, but there are transaction costs and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's pretty efficient, but you know, it's not quite like puts and calls, you know, which are extremely efficient. There's a put call parity there that exactly defines one price versus the other pretty much. From here, I do think this is going to change the dynamic of the race. You know, I'm going to follow the markets. I'd be willing to bet that Biden is not the nominee when all is said and done. But, you know, it's another way to look at the world. And I want to echo that professor's sentiment that let's free these things up so that we can use them to glean information, you know, that the government might actually not want us to know, or other people might not want us to know. You know, free markets are the way to understand this stuff.
Well, I think your point is that in many ways, the free markets will tell us more about what the likely outcomes are than the spin that we see in the news, right? Because the news is very biased one way or the other. Right.
And we don't know what the polls are. The polls are even more complicated, right? But let's just not forget that the markets can be spoofed.
Right. And the Russians did a good job of that last year or a few years ago, last election, right?
I don't know if they actually spoofed the prediction markets, but they could have for sure, right?
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Well, let's say that this presentation really is in the honor of your dad, because your dad would be what, about 100 years old now? What would he be at this point?
Let's see. He was born in 1917, so that would be...
So he'd be 107.
Yeah.
What was his birth? What was his birthday? What was Jimmy's birthday?
I think it was November 20.
So November 20th, he would be 107.
Yep.
Right? What was his first name? Edward?
Leonard. Well, and that's a weird story. They hadn't named him when he was in the hospital, and so the nurses started calling him Jimmy, and he ended up spelling it Jimmie, and so finally when they brought him home, his parents named him Leonard, but he didn't like that. He wanted Jimmy, and when he was 21, he had his birth certificate changed to say Leonard Jimmy.
Oh, Sam, that's a funny story.
Oh, the other thing. Oh, gosh, the other really important thing about my dad's academic career and my own. The only thing that our two careers have in common academically is that we both flunked out of the University of Michigan.
But then they had you and him come back, right?
I didn't come back. He did. He got his doctorate from Michigan. I ended up bouncing around from school to school, and I ended up with a math degree from Boston University, and then a PhD in computer science from Yale, ultimately.
Well, that's pretty good. Yale's pretty good. But along the way, you built the Schmuzzles puzzle, which I have here in my office. And you wrote...
Well, that's for another podcast. We're going to completely confuse our audience if we get into that. But I'd love to talk about that as well.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Talk to you later. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.